Hi, everybody. Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
And I'm very sorry to say we are not actually at home at the moment, but we are somewhere where we have our laptop, but we don't have our recording instrument,
Our microphone.
microphone.
So we're kind of shouting
So
into our laptop.
I hope you'll hear okay. Anyway, we wanted to say to you that this week, while we were away, we saw an exhibition of joy, the like of which I've never seen before. Was it a church with 3,000 people in it singing "Shine, Jesus, Shine"? Was it a march through a town with banners talking about faith? Was it? It was not. It was two Irish setters. Irish setters are possibly the most beautiful dogs in the world. They're quite large, floppy dogs, and they have wonderful bumps on their heads. I had an Irish setter when I was a boy, and I loved them. Now, right opposite the place where we were staying, there's an amazing piece of
We're in
land.
Andrew Sands, and when the tide comes in, it just forms little rivulets with like 1,000 streams. And it was, it was just the most extraordinary display of joy we've ever seen. These two dogs just ran and splashed and chased each other. And the joy in their faces was unbelievable. And we thought this is about the nearest thing to dog heaven that they could probably discover.
Bullying misery out of the world.
Yeah, they were.
They ran and jumped and splashed with such ecstasy. It was just wonderful to watch. We stood like two puddings on the promenade watching this exhibition of joy, and we met their owner, who said they were lovely, but they were also very wet.
And she did say this was their heaven.
Was
didn't
their
she?
heaven.
Yeah.
One of them actually came up and shook himself right near us, and we received a fair proportion of the water that they collected.
Yeah.
But it was, I suppose, just a sort of reminder that that kind of joy is possible. You just let yourself go. It was really wonderful. You should have seen it. I wish you could have seen it.
I mean, that reminded me, Adrian, your mum was in a wheelchair, wasn't she? Paralysed on one side for nearly 9 years. And we used to yearn to know that she was in heaven, leaping around. There's that verse in the Bible, isn't there, about...
There's something in Malachi about how they'll be released like calves from the stalls.
Yes.
And I do like to think of my mother coming out, leaping and running and jumping with joy because she's got her legs back again. And it made me think again about all that. I mean, I became a Christian when I was 16, and there was a lot of talk about joy, and there's always some talk about joy, and it's kind of one of the requirements, rather like the food requirements. There are several requirements for Christian living, and one is joy. But I've never personally been able to quite pin that down. And seeing the dogs made me feel not envious exactly, but just that I wanted to identify what it could actually mean in the case of what we believe or say.
Yeah.
And in a way, it tied in with some of the things we were talking about this week, didn't it?
Well, certainly one or two of them. I mean, we were talking about the times when God managed in some way or another to cross the divide between the heaven where clearly he lived and the earth where clearly he had created it. We talked about the fact that it was incredibly hard to quite think where heaven might be, seeing as how the astronauts have more or less discovered the universe, but how important it was to find they haven't actually discovered the very, very, very beginning of creation. And we looked at that. We looked at how when Jesus was here, although he had access to the power, he lived life as a man. And then we looked at the joy of the Easter garden, didn't we? The moment when he breathed himself back into his creation for a little while and met his friends again. And we can't imagine what that must have been like. But that's pretty near joy, isn't it?
I suppose it was, but I was trying to think there's a story in the Bible, isn't there, about the road to Emmaus, where two disciples, very disappointed, are trudging back home 7 or 8 miles to escape the fact that Jesus has died. He failed. He got blown up on a cross, nailed on a cross, and it's all gone. And what was the point? And they're just going home. And lots of people know this story. Suddenly, this man pops up with them as they walk along, and asks them what's going on, which, considering it was Jesus, as it turned out, is a slightly odd question to ask.
No, I always thought there was a little bit of a twinkle.
Oh, of course.
And because he was walking along with them, and they were telling him what had happened in Jerusalem and how sad it was and how heartbroken they were.
And then he was a bit tough on them, and he said, I don't understand how you could be so stupid. Do you not understand what's happened? And then, something amazing, he went over the whole thing, the history of it, the beginning of it, the middle of it, and where it was now. And we were thinking, normally with a sermon, or say, oh, I'm not sure I agree with that. And afterwards, you will be muttering over their coffee, or you'll go home and grab a commentary.
Or they'll not feel they haven't been fed by the word or whatever.
But this was the real thing. Yeah. And as they walked along, something happened inside them, which we'll mention in a minute. But they get back to where they...
Well, actually, can we just say, what we realized as we were looking at it today was that it was about 6 miles they were walking. So that's...
I think it was 8 miles.
Yeah, but I think Jesus joined them on the way. So, okay, maybe it was 8, maybe it was 7. It was a heck of a long way. And if this sermon, this talk, this listening lasted that long, that's pretty amazing that they still were excited.
We don't know, do we? Because all we know is that when they got to the destination, they invited him in. Well, now, if I'd been bored stupid by a speaker for several hours, I wouldn't have invited him in. I'd have thought, I've had enough of that. But they invited him in, although hospitality was part of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it was getting dark, and dark was dangerous. No street lights, no nothing like that. So
they sit down and they prepare the meal, and then this stranger takes the bread and breaks it, and suddenly there he is. And suddenly they recognize that the person they've been walking with is the man who has failed them. He's the man who has let them down. He's the man who has changed their world into nothing. And yet he's there, sitting opposite them.
Sitting at their table in their little kitchen. There is Jesus.
And as he breaks the bread, he disappears. We're telling the story as it's told. We weren't there, so we don't know. But apparently he disappeared. Yeah. And what is interesting, I think, in this business of joy, and I've never, because I'm not a leaping about, being happy, having fun sort of person.
No, that's all true.
Basilisk on the basilisk. One of them said to the other, do you remember how when he was speaking to us, obviously it had just clicked. Do you remember how when he was speaking to us, something burned in us?
Yeah.
And they remembered that they hadn't experienced that sense of inner burning, of something so exciting that it heats you up right on the inside. Since Jesus actually there, the flesh, talking to them and teaching them and being their friend and sitting by a lake and eating fish and all the other things that they...
And one or two miracles as well on the way that they might have witnessed. Yeah, absolutely. So they rushed home, didn't they? They rushed back to Jerusalem. Well, again, we are talking 7 miles or more that they rushed back to Jerusalem.
Back to danger.
Back to danger, back to their friends, back to say, we've seen him, only to find that the disciples had also seen him. And then, just when they were all chattering and talking, there he is again.
And while we're talking about this, it's interesting to note that this couple might have been a married couple. If it had been you and I,
yes,
they may wish to disagree with this, but I think... No, listen, when he appeared, I think I would have said, that's Jesus. and you'd have gone, it's Jesus. And my excitement would have been as great as yours, but we would have reacted in different ways. But to get the feeling back, that's what I keep thinking. When you lost it, or if you lost it, and you had it, and you liked it, and you wanted it, and now you've lost it, and suddenly you actually got the feeling back of being with him, and feeling the sort of divine optimism for the. Which say, yes, they ran back to Jerusalem, where they found what?
Well, I just said they found the disciples were all chattering around about the fact that he'd appeared to Peter.
Yeah.
And then he appeared to them, and he said, "Peace be with you."
They totally disregarded the fact that some women had seen him first.
They did.
But nothing changed.
No,
nothing
not
changed.
really.
Yeah, that's right. Then he appeared, popped up yet again, and they were, at first, they didn't believe it was him, reasonably, and then they were too excited to believe it was him. And in the end, the thing that actually seemed to make him fully visible as who he was when he said, with great wisdom, I suspect, have you got anything to eat? And they got him some broiled fish. Doesn't sound great to me. They got him some broiled fish. And it looks like, as he ate the fish, they said, it's him.
Well, he's real. I mean, you can't be a ghost and be eating fish, can you? And that's what they were worried about. At least as far as we know, no ghost has ever eaten at all. I mean, he is real. He is back. And yes, he's God now. Absolutely. But he's also their friend. Manufacture that, can we, Adrian? And I mean, I suppose the problem is that it was real. Their hearts did burn in them. We have moments when our hearts burn. The problem is what's happening afterwards, or if it's never happened. Well, you kind of feel you should be joyful. And so there's that sort of rather sad determination to try to make it happen and to try and make yourself feel joyful. And that's why I think seeing these dogs, I was full of joy. I absolutely loved it. I could have watched them forever. And I thought, I wonder if God's watching them and thinking, I made these, because they are a thing of beauty, as you say. I mean, all dogs are lovely. Some dogs are beautiful, and red setters are beautiful and gambling, just chasing each other, their mouths open with delight, their eyes alight. It did give me joy. And I think looking out for those things, we're not probably going to have the experience of walking with Jesus like they did. But maybe we do need to allow the treats, the moments that we had watching the dogs, the treats, the fact that every now and then something so fills us with joy, as long as we don't start imagining that is Jesus. This was Jesus in disguise, leaping around in the water. Yeah, but I'll tell you what else that reminded me of. The moment when Peter sees Jesus on the beach and he's in the boat, and we're told he just throws off his outer garments and stomps through the water, splashes through the water. And that's how it kind of reminded me, because although nothing had been resolved, he wanted to be with them.
I think that's the real point. Because when I thought about it, I thought, you can't have joy workshops.
I bet there are.
There may be. You can't have ways of looking as though you're joyful talk to you. What we're really talking about is real things really happening. So when they felt that, they were burning inside. They weren't saying, I think it's part of the service where we burn inside. They weren't saying, I think it's about time we managed to role play burning inside. It actually happened in them. And I think we have got whatnots connected with institutional church to talking about these concepts as though there's something you can acquire, you can have it put in your hand. But if you're not excited, you're not excited. If you're not joyful, you're not joyful. And I really don't believe personally anyway, that thank goodness, because it's me, and that you'll be particularly happy. But there will be something in you that is warm enough and real enough to give you a feeling that you want to continue and that it's worthwhile. And we've seen this everywhere, that when it's real, it's powerful. When it's real, it's powerful. Yeah.
But maybe we do need to find ways, in our own ways, of splashing through some puddles. And I don't mean actually necessarily splashing through puddles or running around, or, as you say, manufacturing joy. But maybe there are times when we just need to look at what we do have and just enjoy it, because we've all got something that we enjoy. And ages ago, you wrote a letter. You wrote a lot of letters. You wrote a lot of poems. You wrote a poem called Undistinguished Corners. And there's something about this that I really, really love. So we're going to read it to you.
Gladly.
Off you go.
Let's play improvised instruments badly to celebrate the reclamation of damaged things that have cluttered the backyard in undistinguished corners for years and ought to have been got rid of some time ago. Let us stick our fingers on the end of bicycle pumps to make squeaky noises, clink milk bottles together, make Australian sounds with a sheet of cardboard,
Pluck the prongs of a fork, jingle the change in our pockets, squeeze the palms of our hands squelchily together, throw paper bags up and burst them with a bang.
get the air out of a balloon so that it sounds like a violin, bounce gently on a stair that creaks, push a stiff brush across the linoleum, flicker the pages of a book,
Blow screeching noises through blades of grass held between our palms, and drum frenzily with toothpicks on cushions. For he became man and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory in the backyard.
and for some strange reason, he enjoys our music. Yeah, if it's real, and you don't have to make it, you don't have to manufacture it, but you can find it, I think. And I'm really, I think I said the other week when we were doing one of these that I'm more determined to tell the truth now than I ever was, I think, and both of us are. We really want to. And we don't want false joy. There's a thing in Malachi, isn't there, where it talks about false fire on the altar.
But I think we do need to take our undistinguished corners of ourselves, Adrian,
Yeah, that's all right.
and begin to trust that if we just allow those to be seen, even if it's only by ourselves, allow ourselves to play a little bit, allow ourselves to be a bit silly, but maybe that's part of giving God pleasure and joy.
I'm all for this.
Just as we had tremendous joy watching the dogs really being very silly indeed.
I suppose what I mean is that you lose a lot in organized Christianity by forcing people into behavior that is not actually coming from them. And I love the moments. I absolutely love the moments when I feel a burning inside me. And I would like all of us to experience that. And I really thank God for it. But if you say to me, how does that happen? I can only say to you that Jesus is not going to pop up unless he wants to pop up. So if we're looking sad, feeling sad, and standing still and looking sad as those two disciples were, maybe the time might come to look up and see who's around us. I really wish from the bottom of my heart for that to happen to people who follow Jesus, that the burning comes back and the joy comes back, and that they know it's real when they experience it.
And we'll talk to you next week, hopefully with our proper microphone. Goodbye.
Yes, we will.